Welcome to Company Secrets, the Nutcracker Paradox. I'm your host, Jared Redick. This season, we are diving into the most enduring, profitable, and beloved ballet in the world, the Nutcracker. Every year, millions watch it. But how are today's choreographers and artistic leaders handling its complex history and its future? This is season 2. Let's get started. Today, I am joined by Dr. Jennifer Fisher, a renowned dance scholar, cultural critic, former dancer, and author. Dr. Fisher's latest book, The Routledge Introduction to Ballet, Its Culture and Issues, takes a critical look at the art form, examining it through the lens of ethnicity, exclusion, revolution, and cultural practices. She's also the author of the award-winning book, Nutcracker Nation, How an Old World Ballet Became a Christmas Tradition, a former longtime dance critic for the Los Angeles Times, and a vital voice in conversations about race and representation in ballet, contributing powerful commentaries to the New York Times, NPR, CBS, and the BBC. I am delighted to welcome Dr. Fisher, the scholar who also holds the unique distinction of being the only self-appointed ballet coroner to hold regular inquests into the death of Giselle. Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you so much. Good to be here.
Thank you for joining me today. When you look at Nutcracker, what's the first word that comes to mind?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I guess it's Christmas, but that's obvious. I think ritual, because I looked at its power. A ritual reflects a community. It comes around all the time, and it's often a celebration of something really important. It's something that a whole bunch of people recognize because it's got this symbolism on all levels of the ballet world and also way beyond the ballet world. So even though ritual is not a word that we use every day, it's something we do every day. Christmas itself is a ritual. We have religious rituals and secular rituals. So yeah, I thank the Nutcracker for its regularity. It comes around. You can depend on it. So maybe dependable should be my word.
Okay. I was going to go with my next question to talk about the secular ritual aspects of the Nutcracker, right? We think about L. Frank Baum, how he created The Wizard of Oz to be an American fairy tale, and it certainly is. And obviously your latest book explores ballet in terms of secular ritual, right? The Nutcracker functions as a genuine American ritual, as you were saying.
It is. And I think a lot of people who think of Russia immediately, they think of the Russian brand because they had such a heyday in terms of training and masterworks in Russia. So they're often thinking how we got this masterpiece from Russia. These are the roots of the Nutcracker. And definitely they're the roots, but the home of the Nutcracker as we know it now, the place it came of age, is North America. It's an American ritual. And lately, my interviews about the Nutcracker, why is it so popular, are coming from places that are finally starting to adopt the annual Nutcracker, which is what I call what happened when it came to the United States. So Australia Broadcasting wanted to talk to me. They're going, how come we've got this ballet all the time? Right. And we're used to it here, but suddenly it's being transplanted in other places. And that is an American phenomenon.
We're going to talk about it a little bit later, but we know one of the big reasons of it being an American phenomenon is the business elements to it, how it serves to really uphold so many ballet companies across the U.S.
Yes, there are very few statistics. Back in the 90s, early 2000s, when I was doing my research, I came across only one publication that tried to do statistics that the annual budget of ballet companies depended on the Nutcracker from about 30% to about 100% for income. And a lot of people try to use this as, this is why it's popular. It makes money.
Right.
And I have to say, it makes money for really powerful reasons. And Balanchine showed that when you create a commercial project, it doesn't automatically mean there's no art in it. He did both things at the same time. Which he did with Jules, right? You create a ballet hoping Van Cleef and Arpels is going to underwrite it, which didn't happen. But he said, we'll do something commercial, in quotes, that would be about Jules or about the Nutcracker. He cynically said, We'll have the Arabian dance so the fathers have something to look at. He had fun with the idea that this would be a moneymaker, but it's also a work of art at the same time. And I spent a great deal of my career looking at the reasons why it took off here and provides ballet with such a great source of income every year.
Mm-hmm. Act 1 or Act 2? If you could only keep one, which would you choose?
Oh, you have tough questions. This is like taking your favorite disc to a desert island. What would it be? I'd have to say Act 2 because I am such a fan of the classical ballet where the legs are exposed and you get to see lots of point shoes and tulle. It's how I got into ballet. There are a couple ways women tend to get into ballet. They are either hyperactive tomboys, as we used to call them. They don't care anything about the crowns and the jewels and the satin point shoes. Then there are those of us who came in, and many ballerinas who went far, with the idea of dressing like a princess. But if you want to see classical ballet at its finest, as well as people having a little fun with it, the second act is the one they kept in Russia, right? It's the one they kept doing, and they used to do in the summertime all over the world. But it would be pretty hard. It wouldn't be the same ballet without that storytelling. But if I had to take one, since I know the first act already, it would probably be the second.
All the good dancing happens in Act 2, even though there's lots of arguments to talk about the snow scene.
The snow scene. How could we do without that extraordinary music? And the insertion of the Snow Queen, who was not in the original, was genius. So at least we get to some tutus by the time we get there. And that music would be really that transformation music. Different companies do it so brilliantly.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talked to Darcy Kistler after I'd done my dissertation, I'm writing the book. That's when I interviewed her. And she said, "You've never seen, at that point, New York City Ballet live in person?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, I have the videos. And she said, "No, you have to come." And so I did. I perplexed New York City Ballet by asking for free tickets to more than one performance, because as a critic, you only come once. And I said, no, I'm a scholar. I can't afford it. I'm a freelance graduate student scholar. But I did. They gave me that little room at the back where you're glassed off a bit. And when it came to the snow scene, I was advised, it was probably Darcy who said, I actually talked to one of those tough ushers in the theater and said, "I'm here observing from the very back, but when the snow scene comes along, is it okay if I come out of that little booth, walk down I'll be so quiet, but I need to see the whole thing because your top vision was a bit cut off where I was sitting." And she, bless her heart, said I could do that. And I still remember creeping out and getting a look at that whole scene. Yes, and live, Balanchine's musicality does not fail him. He's got every aspect of that transformation, which is, I get chills thinking about it, the way that he staged it. Different companies are different levels of successful about that scene. But she was absolutely right. You had to see it in person. The other person who told me to see it in person is Mark Morris.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to see Arabian, which is not on the video. But also, when you see a Nutcracker in person, you know what its relationship is to its audience.
Right.
And it's very thrilling still. I went to a Nutcracker. My local Nutcracker is great. People told me when I chose it as subject matter, you are going to get so bored. So I spent a lot of my time explaining why we don't get bored with the Nutcracker.
I mean, besides the dancing, it is part of the holiday tradition. And certainly for me, where I work with so many students all the time. You see them evolve through the roles and grow up in the production. And the same could be said for professional dancers, right? Because I grew up as an apprentice in San Francisco Ballet and then moving through all the roles as my career progressed. So there's always something new.
There is. And what I found, what I keep talking about, because people still, because we're in the dance world where we want something new and brilliant all the time, and I don't mind when people do new versions of the Nutcracker, but the thing they mistake is you don't have to hide your love for the Nutcracker. I know that professional dancers do get a bit tired of doing 30, 40 performances sometimes of the same thing, and they affect this nutmarish scenario, as I say. It's like a nutmare.
Yeah.
that, oh my God, snow's going to be in my bag for the rest of the year and I have to do this over and over. But when you scratch the surface of that ennui, that boredom, almost every professional dancer will say, well, yeah, what keeps it alive for me is working through the roles, is the height of orchestration powers from Tchaikovsky, which will constantly feed you. And it's knowing when you walk in the theater and you see that little girl playing around in her party dress in front of the theater, it's her first Nutcracker, their first Nutcracker. And you get excited by the idea that you're bringing this gift to people. So you don't have to be ashamed of liking it. I give people the reasoning for why the Nutcracker is a perfectly good artistic, aesthetic product, as well as having this unusually intimate relationship with its audience.
It is a children's ballet at its heart, but it is great for everyone who gets to see it. You can't get away from that sweeping score of Tchaikovsky. It's always magical.
The score is death-defying.
Yeah.
And I did not know what that meant, death-defying. I was 13 when I did my first Nutcracker. And I was an aspiring professional dancer, not knowing that I would not have the physical equipment to take me that far. But I did get to be in the teenage corps de ballet in the Louisville Ballet at the time. And I heard the grandpa music as the height of my ambition and never understood why it was so serious, death-defying. What does that mean? At 13, you have no idea what death means. But I did find out the secret of that music later. I was sitting at the Thanksgiving table the day we're not rehearsing Nutcracker and listening to that music playing in the other room. And the grandpa comes on with those clashing chords and that descending melody all the way through. It repeats 20 times at least. And I found out that Tchaikovsky's sister had died while he was writing that music. And he couldn't get back to Russia for the funeral. And there's a musicologist, Roland John Wiley, who points out that melody, which I can't hum, but you know it, dum, 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 da, da, dum.
Yeah.
That melody actually matches in many ways the Russian prayer for the dead. So whether he intended it or it was just on his mind, that grandpa, which, as you say, people think this is a children's ballet and the child inside of all of us, it's light, it's celebratory. When you get to the grandpa, almost over the ballet, kids are going to sleep. And that music tells you why there is something worth living for before we die. It's serious music. It's like, what are you doing with your life? This is so important. And it's telling us that two people just fell in love and the world will go on and we can all celebrate while we're here together. That music, which I didn't understand at 13 and 15 and 18, many dancers, they don't get taught the history of it. Why that music makes us cry, it's astonishing.
That is a fascinating take on the music. And now I'm going to, after we get off, I'm going to have to research that a little bit more and follow up with that. That is absolutely a fantastic perspective on it. It's wonderful. We kind of touched on this a little bit, but at this point in your career, what is your relationship to Nutcracker?
I chose it as subject matter when I was a doctoral student. And as I say, people said, you're going to get so bored. Ballet, as you know, even in the 90s, was already taking a beating for being an exclusionary elite form. Feminists had been whacking away at it, telling us how horrible it was that women had to be thin. And ballet deserved a lot of its critique when it was an all-white sort of world. It's made some progress. But I was excited to look into it in some depth because my background had by then been cultural anthropology. And as a dancer, I had turned into an actor, directing, writing, journalism, eventually a critic. But I wanted to come back to ballet. Those of us who love ballet really have to ask ourselves, why do we love it? And why do we spend so much of our time doing it? So that was my world. And I adored being in my field, doing my field work when I went to this small company in Virginia, the Loudon Ballet. Then I went up to the National Ballet of Canada, looked at their new version. And then I got my PhD. That's what you're out for. Then I revised and wrote Nutcracker Nation for a wider audience. And that year, I talked to so many people. That was 2003. That's 23 years ago. And every year since, I've had slightly fewer. I had about 35 interviews the first year, maybe only 10 or 15 the next few years. It went on and on. There hasn't been a year when I haven't talked about it.
Hmm.
And I stopped getting out all the Nutcrackers after a while. I put them away. I thought I'll go on to something else. I've become maybe best known for the Nutcracker. And of course, when the idea of exclusion, when Black dancers started doing Clara, when Phil Chan was revising, helping get horrible stereotypes out of the Chinese dance, that gave us all new ideas about how the Nutcracker, because all dance reflects the culture in which it develops. So the Nutcracker was either going to reflect its original sexist, racist people who did it, colonial, they were of their time, but are we going to keep reflecting that or move on? So that kept me so interested in the Nutcracker. So people, oh, they have the first Black Clara, they said at the BBC. And I said, yeah, it's coming way late. There are already Black Claras all over because the Nutcracker invited tons of so-called different kinds of people into its ranks. It had this big family in it.
Yeah.
So it's had people who don't look like the original dancers for many, many years, welcoming boys in their community when ballet was considered just a girly thing. And the fathers in the community where I was, I don't want my son doing ballet. Oh, well, he's going to be a soldier. Okay,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
can do that. Or you get the 15-year-olds. Oh, you get to dance with girls at the party. Okay. Whether they wanted to dance with girls or not, it was a good way to get into the ballet world. So the Nutcracker had been doing all of this DEI work for a long time, welcoming lots of different people. So my interest, in other words, has stayed strong in the Nutcracker. There was one year when I didn't see one, and I thought, oh my God, something is missing here. And so I started going to my local Nutcracker again,
Mhm.
because as I say in my book, repetition doesn't equal boredom, it equals power. We have a dance like Revelations, which keeps speaking its truth over and over again because it's a masterwork and it keeps saying something we need to hear. So the Nutcracker keeps saying something we need to hear. There's a slight utopian cast of the second act. There is the idea of the happy family, which so few of us have in reality. And I don't have a big extended family anymore, except in the dance world. I know where I can find one. I know where I can find a true passion of mine, which is watching dancers. My local company is a regional company, and they are so good.
Mm.
Sometimes your regional company is a better bet. I don't like all of the huge companies' versions of the Nutcracker. I don't like them anymore, except they have orchestras, kind of fun. They have great dancing. Okay, I will go. But I also love seeing, as you said, dancers through the ranks, seeing young people come into their own with
Yeah.
this authority and creativity that ballet gives them. So I keep getting fed by it. I keep looking towards the spirit of it. The same way I like the aesthetics of Christmas. So I'm about to put things, I don't decorate for Halloween or Easter, I'm not a decorating person. But I do like the look of Christmas,
Mhm.
and so I will get enough things out to sparkle at the depth of winter the way it's supposed to.
We're going to have one last question before we wrap up here. As the scholar who holds the unique distinction of being the only self appointed ballet coroner to hold regular inquests into the death of Giselle, I have to ask you, will you be doing the same for the poor Mouse King?
That is an excellent idea. I'm so glad I have a mandate to do that now, because depending on what version you're looking at, we often miss the fact that Clara, this young dancer who is the only major role for a kid, for a young woman in the ballet world, that she actually saves the Nutcracker with a military maneuver. You have to frame this correctly. And the music is, you might miss it. And a lot of times they arrange to have something else happen. But I like to see Clara with a very clever maneuver. I like to see her distract the Mouse King and help the Nutcracker Prince, or whoever he is in your version at that time, win the battle. But yeah, what actually happens to him after? Was he mortally wounded? Did the sword go in at the right spot? We don't spend too much time because if you make that battle scene really scary, kids won't come to the Nutcracker.
Yeah, exactly.
The music is already scary. My friend used to have the Mouse King run through the aisle to come up on the stage. She had to stop because kids were hysterical.
Yeah.
They were so scared. So I think that's excellent. When you ask a question like that, which seems silly, and it is fun, all my inquests into the death of Giselle, the dancers have been so creative and have so much fun. They've been thinking so hard about why Giselle wasn't out in the field with them, helping them with the harvest. And everybody's got a theory about Giselle. And when you get that conversation going, you just find out more how ballet relates to people on a human level.
I can't wait to see the first inquest for the Mouse King.
That's a good idea. I'll have to credit you for that. Thanks so much, Jim.
Absolutely. So, Jennifer, it's been great chatting with you. Thank you for spending a couple minutes with us here today to talk about the Nutcracker, of which you are one of the few Nutcrackerologists in the world.
Thank you. I hope you have a great, wonderful Nutcracker season.
Thank you, and to you as well. If you liked our conversation here today, you can follow Company Secrets Podcast on all platforms and on our website, companysecretspodcast.com. Thank you for listening, because the stage is only part of the story.